بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, then we were talking about the Eid. This reminders about the Eid or the etiquette of the Eid. First of all, in the Arabic language, Eid is that which is repeated. It comes from the conjugation "aada ya'udu eidan," which means to return, because every year it comes back, or the two Eids come back. Every year they are repeated. Every year has been legislated for us to have the Eid, the two Eids. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with these two Eids, the Eid al-Fitr and Eid-ul-Adha, as a means for us to give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a means for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also to give us that opportunity to be happy and content and to reap His bounties, because after we fast the whole month of Ramadan, we have Eid al-Fitr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with that. And likewise, after performing the Hajj pilgrimage to the Baytullah al-Haram, then we have Eid al-Adha, which is on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. And we are still in the days of Dhul Hijjah, these blessed days of Dhul Hijjah, the best 10 days of the year. Just like the last 10 nights of Ramadan are the best 10 nights of the year, and in that is Laylatul Qadr, and likewise the beneficial du'as that you can say in those nights. The Prophet used to wake up for all of those nights, on the 10 nights. And likewise, in these days, these are the best days of the year, because there are great acts of worship. There is Salah, there's Siyam, there's Hajj, all the pillars you'll find in these days. On the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah, people going out to perform the Hajj pilgrimage. And that is called the Yawm al-Tarwiyah, the day of rest, if you like, or the day where also the Hujjaj would prepare for that great day of Arafah, which is the next day, the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah. The day of Tarwiyah also is a day where the pilgrims would be giving out water to each other, giving out food, drink, and sufficing them, helping them in order to prepare for the days ahead. 9th day of Dhul Hijjah, great day, day of Arafah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends to the lowest heavens, and descends and He boasts to the angels about those who have attended, those who have come from far away, those who have come disheveled and dusty, and they have come to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, which means, here I am, O Allah, I'm at your service. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah has about 19 benefits of just the talbiyah. The talbiyah, that talbiyah of labbaik Allahumma labbaik. You do not say to anyone labbaik except that you affirm that He's going to reply to you to do such and such. So in it is affirmation of Allah's speech as well, and Allah's sifat, that He hears and He speaks and He commands and He orders. So great day of the day of Arafah. But Allah did not leave those who are not in Hajj. He did not leave them without seeking reward. If they fast that day, they will have 2 years of sins being recompensed, being forgiven, I should say. And that is from the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that it expiates the year before and the year after. The preceding year, the year before and the year after, of sins being forgiven if you fast that day, the day of Arafah. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not leave those who are not doing Hajj without reward. Thereafter you have the 10th day of Dhul Hijjah, which is a hard day for the pilgrims, a difficult day, and a great reward, because there are 4 things that the pilgrims will do on that day. And the scholars, they mentioned the 4 letters to describe those 4 things, and 8. And that is, they would do the sacrifice, they would do the halq, ranhat. That is the rami, the sacrifice, the halq, shaving or cutting the hair, and tawaf and sa'i. The tawaf al-ifada is called tawaf al-ifada. And that is a rukun from the pillars of Hajj. And that is a rukun from the pillars of Hajj, doing the tawaf al-ifada. And the day before you do wuquf bi Arafah. And even though the Messenger said al-Hajj Arafah, which is a pillar, being there on Arafah until the sun sets, is a pillar from the pillars of Hajj, but its time is limited. If you miss it, you miss Hajj. But if you just do that, does that mean you've got Hajj? No, it means that this is the best, or from the most important affairs of Hajj is Arafah. But you have to fulfill also, after wuquf bi Arafah, after being in Arafah until the sun sets, you still have to do tawaf al-ifada on the 10th day. You can delay it with tawaf al-wada' at the end. You can delay it to then and join and combine them, and with sa'i. And likewise, you have to have the intention. They are the 4 pillars of al-Hajj. The intention as you come for Hajj. So great day of Eid, Eid-ul-Adha. Now, Allah commanded regarding this day of Eid, this particular day of Eid, Eid-ul-Adha, Allah said, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. And Qatada and Ata and Ikrama, they both said, they all said, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ, and he prayed towards your Lord. They said, Salat al-Eid wa Yawm al-Nahr. That is, the prayer of Eid and the day of Nahr. Nahr here means sacrifice. And that is referring to Eid al-Adha. So there's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pray to your Lord and then sacrifice. And the Prophet said, whoever sacrifices before the prayer, then that is just a sacrifice. But whoever sacrifices after the salah, then that is considered to be the udhiyah. That is considered to be the udhiyah. And of course, in these 10 days, the etiquette is not to cut your nails, or to trim your hair. In these days, not to cut your nails, not to trim your hair, for the one who is sacrificing. So the leader of the house, or the head of the house, if you like, the household, the one that's upon him to buy the udhiyah and to sacrifice, or to give it to someone to sacrifice, then that individual there, the head of the house, it's upon him not to cut the hair or trim the hair or even cut the nails. As for other members of the family, they can. So that is an address specific to the one who's going to slaughter. Also, there's another verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about this Eid al-Adha, where he said, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. Surah Al-A'la, وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى. And the Messenger ﷺ, as well as the Khulafa after him, they used to consider this verse to be regarding the Eid al-Adha. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. That the one he is successful who has purified himself. And also mentioned the name of his Lord, فَصَلَّى. Because from the etiquette of these days is that you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the markets, in the streets, in all situations, you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making takbir. And there is ways to make those takbir. You can either do it in an odd fashion or even fashion. Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Lillahi alhamd. That's the odd, that's the even, sorry. Or you could do it in an odd fashion. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa Lillahi alhamd. So 3 times or twice, you can do it either way, in the beginning or the end. 3 times or twice or twice or thrice, whatever. So that is established in the Sunnah regarding the etiquette or the manner of the takbir, the takbirat. And we'll come to that in more detail. So going out to the Eid prayer, the Messenger ﷺ mentioned about going out to the Eid prayer. He commanded it, and even the women in the menses that they go out, obviously not to pray, but they go out to be present in the Eid prayer. They do not actually join in the prayer because of their state, but they are there. And Atiyya radiallahu anha, she said, "Kunna nu'mar," we were commanded, "an nakhruja yawm al-Eid." We were commanded to go out on the day of Eid. Hatta takhruj al-bikr. Even the young girl, the one who hasn't reached the age of, or the young girl, anyway, she also goes out to the Eid prayer. Hatta takhruj al-Hiyad. Al-Huyad even the women upon her menses, they go out as well. And they used to be at the back of the people. The ones in their menses, they used to go out and be at the back of the people. They wouldn't be joining them in the prayer. فَيُكَبِّرْنَ بِتَكْبِيرِهِمْ. And also, they would also make takbir. They would also make takbir. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu alhamd. So they would also make the takbir, but not audible to the men. But rather it would be audible to themselves and to the women around them, but not audible to the men. And they would not go out with bright, dazzling clothes. Rather, the women would also be upon sitr, they'll be covered with so that they cannot be seen with the beauty, displaying their beauty and adornment to the men. So this is something that from the etiquette of going out to the prayer. And the sunnah actually is to go out walking, but it's allowed to go out on a transport, on a form of transport, whether it's car or whatever, and that's allowed. But it's better to go out walking. And some scholars mention that it is wajib for everyone to go out on the day of Eid. But it seems to be the strongest position that is sunnah mu'akkada. Something which is stressed. They go out, and of course the ones who go out, they should also have prepared for the slaughter, the sacrifice. The Prophet said, whoever has not prepared for that, then let them not come to the musalla, showing you the seriousness regarding that. Showing you the seriousness of, if you are able to afford slaughtering a sheep, and the age of the sheep is 1 year old, or a cow which is 2 years old, or a camel which is 5 years old, then you should slaughter the sheep. You slaughter the sheep. If you're not able, then la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. On no soul does Allah place a burden more than it can bear. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has already slaughtered 63 camels, not sheep, but camels. And some scholars mention one for each year of his life, because he lived for 63 years. So they say that refers to one for each year of his life, where the camels were brought from Yemen. 100 camels were brought from Yemen. He slaughtered 63 of them. And he said, I slaughtered this sheep for himself, for his family, and for his ummah. So for those who cannot afford, then the scholars mention Allah's Messenger has already sufficed you. Because he said, I slaughtered he mentioned at the end of it, he said, I slaughter also for my ummah. And that's a proof that the scholars use also that you can sacrifice, seeking the reward, to be passed on to the deceased only after you have sacrificed from yourself. So to specify a slaughter only for the deceased is not allowed. But following this sunnah, the sunnah of Rasulullah only after the Messenger specified himself, and he said taba'an, as a following of that, also I include a deceased member of my relative, for example, then that is allowed. But specifying a slaughter for the deceased alone is not allowed. So that was some of the benefits regarding that. The Messenger ﷺ would go out, and he commanded the women to go out, as Atiyah radiallahu anha, she mentioned, to go out for the fitr as well as the Eid-ul-Adha. The women in their menses, the young girls as well, they go out, and they can make their dhikr towards the musalla. And to show you its importance, how stressed it is, Atiyah, she mentioned that, O Messenger of Allah, there are amongst the women, amongst us, those who do not even have a jilbab. Some of them were poor. They didn't even have a jilbab to go out, to partake in the Eid prayer. To partake in the Eid gathering. So the Prophet said, لِتُلْبِسْهَا أُخْتُهَا مِنْ جِلْبَابِهَا. Let her sister lend her jilbab. Sister in Islam. Let somebody who has the ability, maybe she has 2 jilbabs, then let her lend it to her sister who doesn't have a jilbab, showing you the importance of the women going out on that day. Showing the importance of that. And as for going out, then going out to the musalla is the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ, he lived in Medina, and yet we know the Prophet ﷺ's the praying in the Masjid al-Nabawi is 1,000 times better than praying in any other masjid, except for Masjid al-Haram, which is 100,000. But the Messenger ﷺ still went out to the musalla, still went out to the desert to perform the Eid prayer, showing you that that it's better to go out to the musalla. Better, that's his sunnah. Because there is great hikmah, great wisdom behind that, and that is to show the greatness of Islam, the legislation of Al-Eid openly, to show it to the people that is open, that this is something that is done collectively, and it's open, it's not just for the men, it's not just, but rather it's for the women, it's children, they go out into the open, showing the sharia, the sha'ira of this great act of worship, this great day, the day of Eid, the day of happiness, the day of eating, the day of drinking. No. So that is to go out to the musalla. We're not even next to Masjid al-Nabawi here. We're in Slough. You don't have, you don't even have 1,000 prayers. Why you want to go and pray in a masjid when the sunnah is to go out to the open and establish that sunnah? Prophet ﷺ didn't even go to his masjid to pray this Eid prayer, when it's known that that salah in his masjid is 1,000 times better than any other salah elsewhere except for Masjid al-Haram. So going out, sunnah of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, establishing that and reviving that, unless you have an excuse. It may be stormy weather, it may be severe weather. In that situation, then obviously you have an excuse. It's like drizzle, people start crying, people start getting emotional. SubhanAllah, like drizzle. For if it was something else of dunya, you'd be out there queuing for hours. But this is deen. Shouldn't we be patient? Shouldn't we just like drizzle? SubhanAllah, the Prophet would love that it rains. He would love that it rains. And I saw Shaykh Muhammad bin Hadi one time coming up the masjid, it started raining in Medina. He took off his shimag, took off his kuf, his hat, his taqiyya, and then rubbed his hair with the water. And he said what Aisha radiallahu anha mentioned the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, or she said, that it came from the one above, and the one above the heavens, and that is the rain. Came from the one above. Allahu Akbar. And rain for the believers, alhamdulillah, is mercy. It's mercy. As mentioned Surah Nuh, فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلُ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ. نعم, Surah Nuh. فَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. So making istighfar is a reason for Allah giving you blessings of rain, of children. فَإِنَّهُ نعم فَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلُ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ. Give you wealth and children, subhanAllah, because of your istighfar. And also open the heavens for it to rain. So this is khair. Khair upon khair. كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يخرج في الفطر والأضحى إلى المصلى. Hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. He would go out, not stay in the masjid. This is sunnah. And who establishes the sunnah? We should be the first to establish this sunnah. Ahlul Sunnah, Ahlul Athar, the Salafiyun. First and foremost, holding on to the narration. They love the hadith. And they love the Fahm Salaf, Fahm Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, ajma'een. Naam, and he mentions that. As for the time, of course, it's after the sun rises. Naam, until the sun becomes in the highest point, which is the zenith. So between that time, that's the time of duha. From that time, from ishraq, after ishraq, straight up to the zenith. So the time is spacious. But obviously, if you have this for Eid-ul-Adha, the sunnah is not to eat before, but rather go to the prayer, and the eating is delayed. The eating is delayed, the sacrifice comes after. As for Eid al-Fitr, then you eat odd number of dates and then you pray the prayer. As for the sifah, how to pray the prayer, there is 2 rak'ahs. In the first rak'ah, it is after takbiratul ihram, which is a rukun, which is a pillar from the pillars of the salah. Then you do 6 more. So it's like 7 in the beginning and 5 in the second rak'ah. That's 5 after you come up from the takbir of intiqal, of moving from one position to another. Then you do that 5. And in between, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would pause between the takbirs. He would pause and he would either say Alhamdulillah, or he would say Thana upon Allah, praising Allah, extolling Allah, or Salah upon the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can say any of those 3. Or dhikr in general, between the takbirs. So Salat al-Fitr rak'atan and Salat al-Adha likewise, similar fashion. Na'am, and that has been reported in Sunnah Nisa'i and Ibn Khuzaymah, other than that from the books of Sunan. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يخرج يوم الفطر والأضحى إلى المصلى فأول شيء يبدأ به الصلاة. First thing he will start with is the prayer, not the khutbah. The prayer and then the khutbah. And he would say whoever wants to stay for the khutbah, they'll stay. And he would specify a khutbah for the women or portion of that khutbah for the women. And there's difference of opinion. Is it 2 sermons or 1? And the strongest position from the authentic narration is that it is 1. There's some slight difference of opinion amongst the scholars regarding that. But those who say it's 2, they use a da'if narration. So it's 1 sermon without sitting, and that which benefits the people is mentioned. As for what is recited, Surah Al-A'la and Surah Al-Ghashiyah is recited, and also from the Sunnah is to recite Surah Qaf, and also Surah Al-Qamar. It's also اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر is also can be recited. So that's from the Sunnah of the actual Salah. And after the Salah, the khutbah is given and delivered, and he specifies that which is beneficial to the Muslims. From the narration in Sahih Muslim from Jabir radiallahu anhuma, Jabir ibn Abdullah, صليت مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم العيد غير مرة ولا مرتين فبدأ بالصلاة قبل الخطبة بغير أذان ولا إقامة. So there's no adhan and no iqamah. يرفع يديه مع كل تكبيرة, raising his hand upon every takbir. Who said that? Jabir radiallahu anhu in hadith Sahih Muslim, raising his hand upon every takbir. And that's the Sunnah. As the Imam is saying, the takbir 7 in the first and 5 in the second. Allahu Akbar, pausing. Allahu Akbar, pausing. Allahu Akbar 7 times. Then the Surah Al-Fatiha after A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, and then the Surah. What about Dua al-Istiftah? Dua al-Istiftah, that is said straight after the first takbir. Why? Because that is usually the place where you say it. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he asked the Messenger, what do you say, O Messenger of Allah, after the first takbir? That's in general, another narration. What do you say after the first takbir? When you are silent. SubhanAllah. When you are silent. And that is, he says the dua al-istiftah. He taught him the dua al-istiftah, the opening dua that you say. No. So after that, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, whatever the Imam recites is allowed. Yani, if he doesn't recite any of those surahs that the Prophet recited, then it's allowed. Just like from the rest of the prayers. It is allowed to recite any other surahs apart from those that are specified in the Sunnah. But if he recites that which has been legislated, it's better. It is better to follow the Sunnah of Rasulullah. And also from the benefit that we benefit from our brothers here is that Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, we read it as well when we went back to the book, is that in Jum'ah, for example, you recite Surah Al-A'la and Surah Al-Ghashiyah, similar to the day of Eid. But Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he said, if you're going to do Surah Al-A'la in the first rak'ah, if you want to follow the Sunnah, But don't do a'la and then do something else in the second rak'ah. This was something that I did in the past. It was a mistake. Even though it's allowed, but Ahl Sunnah, they love the Sunnah. And if you're going to follow this, because people may be confused, oh, is that a Sunnah as well? A'la, they know is Sunnah. Second rak'ah, they may not know is Sunnah to pray Ghashiyah only. From that Sunnah that Messenger said. So, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen actually says, don't play. He said, if you want to follow the Sunnah, follow the Sunnah. But if you want to keep it open, then recite any other two surahs. Or some, he says, they split it. They split this one and then they split another one. Yani, half of the Sunnah they perform and then the other half is somewhere from other portion of the Quran. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, he says, establish the Sunnah, establish the Sunnah. Surah Al-A'la, Surah Al-Ghashiyah. Or, recite something else in the first and something else in the second. But don't mix the two. We mentioned about the Sifat al-Khutbah, and this is only regarding the Eid that we mentioned. There is no nawafil prayer before the Eid prayer or after at the Musalla. But there is an authentic report that the Messenger ﷺ, after going home, he prayed 2 rak'ahs. This is actually a sunnah that is mahjur, that is actually many people have left and have which needs to be revived. Pray the sunnah of 2 rak'ahs in your house after you've completed the Eid prayer. But at the Musalla there's no prayer before or after. Unless you're in the masjid, if it's severe weather outside, difficult weather, and you end up praying in the masjid, then you pray sunnah taht al-masjid. And that's only because you want to sit down. Because the Messenger ﷺ said, إِذَا دَخَلَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَسْجِدِ فَلَا يَجْلِسْ حَتَّى يُصَلِّيَ رَكْعَتَيْنِ. If any one of you enters the masjid, do not sit down until he prays 2 rak'ahs. So when you enter the masjid, the tahiyyat al-masjid it's only obligatory upon you to pray those 2 rak'ahs if you want to sit down. But if you want to stay standing until the Imam comes, that's up to you. But if you want to sit down, don't sit down until you pray 2 rak'ahs. Command from the Rasul ﷺ, and a command necessitates an obligation, unless there is proof to say otherwise, as is known in Usul al-Fiqh, from the scholars who have explained how to understand the text. Finally, from the and Az-Zuhri actually affirms that. He said, I do not know any of the scholars from the Salaf that they would pray any prayer before or after. And Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu and Hudayfa, they used to forbid anyone from praying any prayer beforehand. So anyone comes, sit down. You sit down, you wait for the Imam. And when the Imam comes, no iqamah. How about if you're in a masjid now, like this masjid here? When do you actually stand up? Do you stand up when the iqamah is given? Do you wait until the muaddin says, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ? Or do you wait until just the Imam actually walks in before the actual iqamah is given? The strongest position is, as Shaykh Abbad Hafidhullah mentioned, that as soon as you see the Imam, that is legislated for you to get up. You don't have to wait for قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ before you actually get up for the prayer. That's any other times outside the Eid prayer. And that is some narrations regarding that which clearly clarify that as soon as the Imam enters, then they would stand up for the prayer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions finally the regards the takbir. The takbir generally in these 10 days, وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. In these 10 days, the takbir al-am you do. In the markets, in the streets, takbir, mention the takbir and the dhikr of the Messenger ﷺ that he would say in these days. But specifically, it is specified in 2 forms, and I'll explain those ones. How to do it? Loudly. Whether it's loudly in your house, loudly in the markets, loudly in the masajid, and in every place where there is dhikr to be performed, you mention it loudly and you mention it much. And that is narration in Daraqutni, which is authentic from Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, that when Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha came upon us, they would يجهر بالتكبير. They would openly, loudly say the takbir until they would come to the musalla. Until they would come to the musalla, the prayer place. And they would continue even after that until the imam comes. And then they would pray the salah. Eid al-Adha, نعم, he says here, وهو التكبير الذي شرع عقب كل صلاة فريضة في جماعة فيلتفت الإمام إلى المأمومين ثم يكبرون لما وراه الدارقطني ابن أبي شيبة وغيرهما من حديث جابر أنه كان صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا صلى الصبح من غداة عرفة. This is now the specific one that we're talking about. In these 10 days, you mentioned the takbir anytime in these blessed times. But specifically on the morning of Arafah, the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah, that morning, after Fajr, for you and me who's not doing Hajj, then you mention that takbir specifically after every prayer from that morning of Fajr of Arafah, all the way to Asr on the day of Tashriq, the 3rd day of Tashriq. Because the days of Tashriq are 3 days. After Eid, you have the 11th, 12th and 13th. Asr, and after every prayer, the takbir, you mention that specifically for you and me who's not in Hajj. And as for the Hujjaj, then they are already doing the Talbiyah. They are doing the Talbiyah right until the day of Eid, when they throw the stones at Jamrat al-Aqaba. Day of Eid, when they throw the stones at Jamrat al-Aqaba. And that's the only one that they're going to throw the stones at on that day. 7 stones at Jamrat al-Aqaba. And that is for the day of Eid. Now, on the morning of Eid, take a bath. And that is from Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, who said, كان يغتسل يوم الفطر قبل أن يغدو إلى المصلى. So from the Sunnah is to take a bath, not just on the day of Fitr, but also Al-Adha. Have a shower, take a bath. You're going to be with the Muslims. You do that anyway for Friday prayers. Before you go out for Friday prayers, you take a bath on a Friday. And there's difference of opinion. Is it obligatory to take a bath on a Friday or not? The narrations that mention that is obligatory, غسل يوم الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم. That taking a bath on Friday is obligation upon everyone who has reached puberty. Everyone who has reached puberty, because wajib, based upon that narration. But we find there's another narration. من اغتسل يوم الجمعة فبها ونعمت. Whoever has a bath on a Friday, then well and good. So this shows us that this one that mentioned is wajib, a command, has come down now to what? Mustahab. Why? Because we have this narration. And also, when Umar al-Khattab radhiyallahu anhu was given khutbah, and Uthman radhiyallahu anhu came, and he came late in that particular time, and Uthman, when he told him about that, he said to him, and also I didn't do ghusl. He said, and you didn't do ghusl? And he didn't tell him to go back and do ghusl. If it was wajib, he would tell him, go do ghusl and come back. So it seems like the strongest position is not obligatory, but some scholars say it could be. If you really smell, then it's obligatory for you to do the ghusl. Nah, some people, they work in the farm. Some people, they work and it's so sweaty and you're not supposed to harm your Muslims. So for some, it might be obligatory to take a bath on a Friday. No. And if you wake up with upon janaba, then you have to do ghusl anyway on that day. The question is, do you have to do 2 ghusls? Shaykh Al-Bani says, we have not found anyone to bring us proof that an obligation can suffice another obligation. An obligation suffices another obligation. So you have 2 obligations there. That's if you see that ghusl yawm al-jum'ah is obligatory, which we don't see that. But if you wake up upon janaba, then basically one is sufficient. One is sufficient, and you can join the 2 intentions, the intention of ghusl for Jum'ah and the intention of al-janaba. Why? Because ghusl yawm al-jum'ah is not obligatory anyway. So based upon the strongest position on that in that regard. And also there's great reward as well. There's a narration that mentions if you wake up on a Friday, and you perform and you basically make your family, your spouse, do ghusl. And they say that signifies relations on that day. And you go out to the salah, and you basically you listen to the khutbah and you pray with the imam, then there's great forgiveness for that person. So they say it's actually sunnah on that day to have relation in the morning. And to make, because the hadith says you make your wife have ghusl. Anyway, that's another issue. We said finally, the last parts of Adab al-Eid is that perfume yourself. Of course, for the women to be careful of that because of the general other wordings where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned about the woman, any woman that goes out perfumed and a non-mahram smells her, then it's as if she has performed zina, fornication. So the women do not go out perfumed in front of men. They are careful not to do that, of course. And also the takbir we mentioned, the eating we mentioned, and also the hadith of Abdulilah ibn Umar anhuma أن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يكبر يوم الفطر من حديث يخرج من بيته حتى يأتي المصلى. So he would do the takbir until he would until he would pray. And going one way, the sunnah is to go one way and to come back another way. To go one way in one path, and after you completed the prayer and listen to the khutbah, you come out another way. And also their happiness. Make sure you bring happiness to your family, your children. Now, collectively, they used to have 2 Eids before, 2 days of happiness in Jahiliyyah. So the Prophet ﷺ said to them, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَبْدَلَكُمْ بِهِمَا خَيْرًا مِّنْهُمَا. Allah has changed that which is better for you. He's given you that which is better than your 2 days of happiness in Jahiliyyah, and it's Eid Yawm-ul-Adha wa Yawm-ul-Fitr, Hadith Sunnah Abi Dawud, which is Sahih. So make sure you bring a day of happiness. And it's not a day of sin. Happiness does not mean singing music. Does not mean music. And as for the narration of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq with Aisha anha, and she was looking towards the warriors, if you like, performing. Then and also the young girls would play the duff. Then that was young girls. These young girls playing the duff, not all the ladies playing the duff. And some now you have even men playing the duff, resembling women. And you have that which is munkar with regards to music, where musical instruments are played. And we have the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that my ummah will make 5 things halal that were already haram. They will fall into 5 things that are haram, and they will perform them or act as if they are halal. And from that he said ma'azif, which means musical instruments. So musical instruments not to be played. There's an exception for girls to play the duff on the day of Eid. That's something else. But as for generally listening to music, then it's haram, it's haram, it's haram. From the verse in Surah Al-Najm, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَفَمِنْ هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ تَعْجَبُونَ وَتَضْحَكُونَ وَلَا تَبْكُونَ وَأَنْتُمْ سَامِدُونَ. This is the way of the mushrikun, the polytheists, Jahiliyyah. Allah said, أَفَمِنْ هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ تَعْجَبُونَ. With this Quran that is being recited, تعجبون, you are amazed, تعجبون. وَتَضْحَكُونَ, and you laugh. وَلَا تَبْكُونَ, and you don't cry. Because when the Quran was recited and they would hear it, they would laugh and joke. The polytheists would laugh and joke. And تَضْحَكُونَ وَلَا تَبْكُونَ وَأَنْتُمْ سَامِدُونَ, and you are samidun. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, the hibr of this ummah, the ocean of knowledge of this ummah, the mufassir of the Quran, the one that the Messenger ﷺ said, Allahumma faqihhu fi ad-din wa 'allimhu ta'wil. Oh Allah, give him understanding of the religion and give him the interpretation of Quran. What did he say? He said, Wallahi innaha ghina, Wallahi innaha ghina, Wallahi innaha ghina. By Allah, it is referring to music, music and singing. By Allah is referring to that. By Allah is referring to that. This is what Allah has rebuked. And in the other verse, lahu al-hadith is being rebuked. And that is the way of shaitan, the mizmar of shaitan, the speech of shaitan. calling you away from the dhikr of Allah, away from the Quran. So if you want to resemble the polytheists, you go and sing and dance and play music. If you want to resemble the mushrikun, that's what they used to do. That's what they used to do. And Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, when he heard music being played, he put his fingers in his ears. And he said to Nafi', أَتَسْمَعُ شَيْءٍ? A narration in Bukhari. Oh Nafi', do you hear anything? Ya Nafi' أَتَسْمَعُ شَيْءٍ? Oh Nafi', do you hear anything? Ya Nafi' أَتَسْمَعُ شَيْءٍ? Oh Nafi', do you hear anything? Until he could not hear anything else, then he took his fingers out of his ears. He didn't want music to enter his heart, ya ikhwan. He didn't want music to enter his heart and to spoil his heart. Subhanallah. This is Sahaba radiallahu anhu. When we mentioned this too, there was a takfiri in Acton. Subhanallah. It's funny. It's takfiri, but he allows music. And he actually used this narration to say, well, Nafi' was listening. So he said, subhanAllah, they always talk about hukm of Allah, hukm of Allah, hukm of Allah. You want to go to the student or you want to go to the teacher? Who's the teacher? Nafi' or Abdullah ibn Umar? Always take the adillah from the back. Enter the houses from their doors. Understand the narration. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu is the teacher. He's teaching Nafi'. This is what we do. This is what we do. We don't listen to music. We don't listen to music. So he put his fingers in his ears, not wanting to listen to that, enter in his heart. The mizmar of shaitan enter in his heart. So that was what we mentioned to him, that subhanallah, Nafi' is the student. And Abdullah ibn Umar is teaching him that this is something which is munkar. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, protect us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to occupy us with that which is beneficial, with the dhikr of Allah, especially in these days. Any actions done in these blessed days, magnified immensely. ما من أيام العمل الصالح فيهن أحب إلى الله من هذه الأيام العشر. قالوا ولا الجهاد في سبيل الله قالوا ولا الجهاد في سبيل الله إلا رجل خرج بماله وأهله ولم يرجع بشيء. That these days are more beloved than any other days, more beloved to Allah than actions done in these days. So we only have a few days left. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we busy these days with Quran, with dhikr, with helping each other for the sake of Allah, visiting relatives, being good and kind to your mother and your father and your brothers and your sisters, keeping ties, helping those who are in need, giving charity. If you're able to do Hajj, do Hajj. These are the blessed days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. And inshallah the ahkam al-udhiyah we can do after maybe the dars tomorrow. We can talk about the actual slaughter. And we didn't actually want to advertise Eid, the rulings of Eid and slaughter, because people want to understand who you're slaughtering. I'm talking about sheep, not the... No.
On the entering the mosque, nearly the Maghrib time, should you still pray to Nafil?
If it's just about 1 minute left before the iqamah,
4 or 5 minutes left,
there's difference of opinion.
I was told not to do it.
There's difference of opinion. Of course, that is the makruh time, when the sun is yellow. Did the Prophet pray any nafilah after Asr? Yes, he did. Straight after Asr, when he missed the Sunnah al-Dhuhr, there's a narration in Bukhari, he prayed after Asr, 2 rak'ahs. However, when the sun turns yellow, until the sun sets, this is makruh time. The time of the polytheists. The time of the polytheists worshipping, the time of also the Majus worshipping at sunrise and sunset. It's makruh. But if you want to sit down, it becomes obligatory for you to pray if you want to sit down. If you can stand up, it's better, and stay until the Imam comes. Especially a few minutes, it's not a problem. Stay, Or you can pray. But it's makruh, but you can pray because you have an excuse. You have an excuse, and that excuse is you want to sit down, especially if you're elderly. If you're young, stay standing a few minutes, the Imam comes, and then pray that sunnah, revive that sunnah after the adhan of Maghrib, which many people have left. The adhan of Maghrib, the 2 rak'ahs generally for every adhan in Iqamah, but if you do it in adhan of Maghrib, then that's sunnah, which is the Sahaba used to do. Now,
In Arafat, if someone goes sick and then you see he couldn't perform his tawaf. Would he do it after a week or 2 weeks when he's better?
You're talking about Tawaf al-Ifada?
Yeah.
Tawaf al-Ifada, no problem. He can delay it, but he must not leave. He must not leave Mecca. He must stay in Mecca until he gets better. And especially the women in their menses. They're not allowed to perform Tawaf al-Ifada until they are purified after that. Then they can perform it. So there's no harm in doing that, delaying it a week. ما في مشكلة. They can delay it. Men, women, older men, no problem. They can delay it, and they can even join that with the Tawaf al-Wada', the farewell Tawaf, and make their Tawaf al-Ifada with that intention. Make the Wada' with the intention of Tawaf al-Ifada, and then they leave Makkah. جزاكم الله خيرا.